Take a look at this map. What do you see? Two different maps of the same thing, maybe? No. The top map is locations of unsolved missing person cases and mysterious disappearances that have gone unsolved, and the bottom map is of the largest known cave systems in the United States. Suddenly, the fact that they look almost alike becomes a whole lot more sinister. This is a super unsettling scenario just to even think about, and to be frank, I'm sure some of this is coincidence. I know causation doesn't equal correlation, but today, I want to just sit down and have a conversation, and we're going to examine this image and its implications from all sides. As coincidence, we're going to look at why people might be going missing in areas like this, like a missing 411 scenario, where someone decides to just explore and they get lost. We're going to examine the idea of could serial killers or opportunistic killers use caves like this as hotspots to dump bodies. And for the Halloween season, we're also going to look at the idea of could there be something more sinister and spooky at play? What if something is coming out of these caves and taking people away? We know underground oceans exist below the surface of the earth. What if these old myths from around the world about underground monsters have a little bit more to them than we think? Today for Halloween, what we are going to do is just examine this really unsettling fact that where there are lots of caves, people seem to go missing. And I'm also going to be telling some stories related to this topic about people who went missing in caves around the world while. Look, I'm just going to be frank. Caves are scary. I find caves very cool, but they are some of the most unsettling things when you really think about them. And just the fact that they are places humans have never seen, like the bottom of the ocean. And in some cases, they're places light has never even reached. And what can be in them is just as alien and mysterious as anything in the deep ocean or space. I've even written cave-related horror stories in the past, and one of my favorite horror movies is The Descent. Now, I'm going to reiterate before we begin. I think this is just an interesting thing to have a conversation about. This video isn't going to be like my normal documentaries and stuff. This is going to be just more like I'm having a conversation with you and just talking about something. And honestly, it's a topic that's perfect for Halloween, and this is probably the best and only time of year that I could actually talk about something like this. But just remember, again, causation does not equal correlation. And a lot of these cases are definitely not related to the caves that are in the area. And just keep that in mind, and let's be respectful to the real people who are missing and the real people who are in some of these stories that I'm going to be talking about. So, first off, hitting up Snopes, fact checkers agree that while, yes, there is a concentration of missing people in the regions with more caves, we need to remember that these are not the only places that people go missing in the United States. Look, the sad fact is, people disappear every day in this country, all across this country. Not just in the regions where there is a higher concentration of caves. Now, that's not to say that, all of these disappearances that do correlate to caves are sinister. But again, we're just going to look at this from all angles before getting into some of the more scary possibilities with monsters and Bigfoot and serial killers and who knows what else. But caves also have openings and unmapped openings all over the place. And, someone just out and about who doesn't know what they're doing could easily find an opening, grab their phone flashlight, try to crawl down and have a look, and never come out again. I know where a sinkhole is that if you don't know what you're looking for, you may not even see it, but it is an opening to an almost 200 feet deep shaft. Also, can videos of people going into caves and having random encounters with animals like mountain lions and bears maybe shed a little light onto why people may go missing in caves? Possibly. Some of these encounters might not end well if the person doesn't back off quick enough and the animal feels trapped or threatened. I've seen, just the other day, I saw a short on YouTube of a guy crawling in a cave. He saw what he thought was a boulder ahead. He crawled closer and it whipped around and snarled at him. It was a mountain lion. Stuff like that can happen, and who's to say that sometimes we don't see the encounter because the person recording it didn't get out? So just continuing with some of the basic ideas, just to kind of knock them out of the way. Other natural solutions are definitely possible. A sudden water surge flowing through a cave, kind of like you see in this video, and people can't get out. They drown, and their bodies are washed deep into the caves and never be found. Personally, I think being trapped in a flooded cave is one of the absolute scariest things you can imagine. It's also just as likely that people can simply see a cave, think they'll explore, and then they get lost or hurt or something like that. Caves can be so deceptive with their danger, and all of these are possible reasons as to why people who might go missing in cave systems may not have a truly sinister motive behind them, and especially some of the very larger ones, if people decide they just want to look around, they may not ever come out again. It's also very likely someone could stumble upon an unmapped cave, get curious, go in, and, well, we're actually going to look at a kind of case similar to this later in the video about 3 boys who went into a recently exposed cave system and they were never seen again. But just to entertain the idea, what if there was something lurking down in the dark with these people? What if there are things in these large cave systems that are unknown to us? What about all these stories from around the world, both ancient and today, of people encountering things in caves, something straight out of the Descent? And, a lot of civilizations around the world also have these legends of caves that go down into like this hollow space under the earth. And I'm not talking straight up hollow earth, but maybe there are more vast caverns and networks that we don't know about. I mean, heck, again, we now know an underground ocean exists on this planet, and we didn't even know about that 50 years ago. But look, as much as I want to believe, and there are plenty of scary unverified stories of people encountering all kinds of terrors in caves, and again, plus ideas of the earth being hollow and having all kinds of scary things down in it, something I referenced in one of my narrated urban legend stories, talked about Agartha briefly. This is something that may not be too far from reality as a concept, but that ties back into the whole underground ocean thing. For this video, I'm going to focus more on the actual stories I could find of people who vanished in caves without explanations, or their disappearances tied to a cave, and I did try to find some stories of people encountering, monsters and stuff in caves, but I couldn't really find anything that really fit this video in a satisfying way for me, because I'm really just wanting to talk about the reality of this topic and what might be behind it. And I guess while I'm on this side tangent to the whole cave monster side of things, how would something coming out of a cave, maybe something that's evolved to live in caves, catch a person? Imagine a pail. We'll just go with the monsters from The Descent again, for example, if you've seen it. Imagine one of those things coming out of the cave and just stalking you through the trees while you're deep in the woods. It's following you by echolocation. You don't see it, but it might as well see you, and it hunts you at the same time, while you're none the wiser. It's scary. It's a scary idea. It's a very scary idea, and sure, I'm willing to entertain the idea that there are dangerous predators that maybe do live in caves that occasionally come out and snatch people. But for now, let's actually get to the mysteries I referenced and what might be behind them. And of course, one case worth talking about in a video like this is definitely the case of Kenny Veach, whose disappearance is tied to a mysterious cave, but also another factor I haven't talked about yet, but that might lead people to disappear: government secrets. Now, I'm not throwing on a tinfoil hat here and going off the deep end. I just want to spend some time of this discussion talking about Kenny Veach. His disappearance is completely unexplained, and it could be tragic but mundane to something more sinister, because given where he was, there is a chance he may have seen something that some higher authorities did not want people to see. So, getting into it, 47-year-old Kenny Veach was a YouTuber who disappeared 10 years ago now while hunting for a specific M-shaped cave he claimed to have found out in the Nevada desert in the vicinity of Area 51. One theory is that the cave may even have been some kind of entrance to it or some other underground facility. He claimed that when he got near the cave, his body actually began vibrating and shaking in a strange way, and he got such a bad vibe that he left. After being coerced by other YouTube comments to go back and actually film this discovery, he set out to do so. His last video shows him in the area and him explaining his planned search area. That last video was uploaded, he went out again, and he was never seen again. Though his cell phone was found at the bottom of a mine shaft, there is no evidence at all Kenny himself was even in the area. He was not down there. Now, this story contains one detail worth mentioning, and it doesn't suggest a creature took him, but rather something else. You see, the effects he claimed to have felt are really not unlike those who are hit with special deterrent kind of weapons the US military has feel. They're non-lethal, but they cause that shaking feeling that essentially pushes someone away for something they're not supposed to see. And look, I'm going to be frank, given his close vicinity to such a secret military base that has, very notoriously been kept under a lot of scrutiny and secrecy, the connection may be a little bit more than coincidence, and the idea that he may have stumbled across some kind of entrance to it may not be without its merits. Kenny's story and the mystery around it, honestly, I could do a whole video dedicated to it, and maybe I will someday, but other people have covered it before, so if you want to see more, I would suggest go looking for one of theirs. For now, though, you get the idea. So what if he and others who have vanished in some caves around the world have found something while exploring so secret that they had to be silenced? Maybe even on sight. Again, the idea is really scary. We don't need scary monsters of mayhem to start wondering about the sinister similarities between the two maps. But those ideas are just speculation, In truth, his death could have been a tragic accident, maybe he got trapped or fell into a cave. But all of the ideas you can have about it, though, are definitely, they are chilling. And there are definitely things that are so secret that they would not let people who stumble across them leave. I mean, that's just how it is. It's this very scary idea, but that's just how it is. And I'm going to stop before I have the Men in Black come knocking on my door. So another YouTuber, exploring abandoned mines, claimed that they actually may have found the cave, and their video shows the entrance to the cave they found may have actually been recently buried, and I also believe they once mentioned that while they were on site looking around, there were military vehicles nearby on a ridge watching them until they left. So it just makes you think, and I'm not gonna lie, it really sends a chill up the spine. And again, I'm not throwing on the tinfoil hat. I'm just kind of thinking out loud with this one. That's kind of how I'm doing this whole video. And it's just because again, there are some secret projects and stuff that definitely people who find them would not be allowed to leave. And again, it's just a scary idea, but that's just how it is. Now, a slightly different situation, but another story that we can look at is the weird disappearance of Ben McDaniel. Now, definitely throw away whatever tinfoil hats you are making for this one, because there's not any sinister possible government cover-up with this one. His disappearance happened in an underwater cave, somewhere where accidents can happen so much easier than in above-ground caves, but let's still look at it. So Ben McDaniel, he was born on April 15th, 1980 in Memphis, Tennessee, and in 2010, Ben visited the Vortex Spring Cave in Florida. Ben was last seen entering the cave 58 feet below the surface, and he was never seen again. And honestly, at the entrance to the cave, in front of the gate, is a sign featuring the Reaper, which says the following: "Prevent your death. Go no further." An employee of the cave, Eduardo Terran, was the last person who saw Ben. He actually opened the gate to allow him to enter the cave. Now, divers with experience are given a key, and Ben was, as far as I know, not someone who actually had a key. He didn't have the experience. However, the reason that Eduardo opened the gate was because he was afraid Ben would tire himself out struggling to get the gate open, or maybe even get stuck in the gate. Now, when a search was finally called days later, rescue divers found no sign of Ben anywhere. However, they did find his air tanks, 2 tanks that were Ben's were found near the entrance of the cave. Extremely experienced divers were then called in to go and recover Ben's body, but they too found no sign of Ben or where he might have gone. It was like he vanished into thin air, and to this day, nobody knows where Ben is. Eerily, it's almost like he's not in the cave at all, or somehow got taken so far in, he'll never be found. It's as unsettling as it is utterly tragic. Searches on land also found no sign of him at all. Now, another cave, which just scares the absolute shit out of me that people have vanished in, is called Devil's Hole. And I legitimately think this is just one of the scariest because of what they found at the bottom. If you don't know this, it sends a chill down my spine every time I think about it. So, in 1965, a teenager named Paul jumped the fence around the cave and went scuba diving in the hole. He was never seen again. His friend David went into the cave to try to find him, and was also never seen again. In summer of that year, during the second of the attempted recovery and rescue of the divers, an individual named Jim Hoots, I believe that's how you say his last name, and his dive partner, they were down at the very bottom of Devil's Hole. Almost think of it like, it's not really a funnel shape, but you kind of get the idea. They're down, maybe more of like a cup shape, right? They're down at the bottom of the cup, basically. And at the very bottom of Devil's Hole, there was a current pulling the water into another opening. At the very bottom of Devil's Hole, there is another opening, and the water is getting pulled into it almost like a drain. There's a current. So the 2 rescue divers assumed the 2 bodies of the missing teens got sucked in by this current. So they went all the way down to it with a rope that had a measurement and a weight on the end, and they threw it in. The weight went all the way down until the rope stopped without hitting the bottom at 932 feet straight down. This hole went down at least 932 feet without having a bottom. Where this cave system below this room, called the Infinity Room, goes is to this day unknown. However, in 2012, a 7.4 magnitude earthquake in Mexico, over 2,000 miles away, caused a tsunami-like event to come up that hole and into Devil's Hole. Devil's Hole is essentially a skylight to an extremely deep and unmapped underground water system. It is even theorized to connect to a potentially massive underground ocean. And if that isn't pure nightmare fuel... Look, the fact that this rope went down over 900 feet and didn't hit the bottom is just creepy already. I hate it. Thanks. I hate it. I'm not afraid of caves or claustrophobic, but that just scares me. That just gives me that deep, skin-crawling, tingling, feeling. Like, how deep does it go? But there's more as well. Like I said, earthquake in Mexico over 2,000 miles away caused a tsunami to come out of the hole, and scientists think it connects to an underground ocean. And guess what? It is believed that around 700 kilometers below Earth's surface, within the mantle, there is indeed an underground ocean so massive that it contains more than 3 times the amount of the water on the surface of the planet. Just think about that for a second. As one of my friends put it when I told him about this, barrel trauma in real life, only here on Earth, right below our feet, instead of on Europa. So who is to say that these 2 divers did not get pulled all the way down into whatever this underground ocean is, and who knows where they ended up. Oh, and heaven forbid if they were alive. Also, if there is something lurking down there, this is where it would be. Something totally alien to us and cut off from the surface. And if you were ever in that cave and you got too close to that hole and pulled in just a little too far to pull yourself back out, it doesn't... Something doesn't have to take you down there, but something might very well find you at the bottom. Also, in space, on Europa, for example, we think there is life, but it is far below the frozen surface in a deep underground ocean. And who is to say something similar isn't happening right here on Earth, right below you, as you're sitting and listening to me rant in this video? Now that creeps me out, Remember, we know more about space and the moon than we do our own oceans, and this takes deep oceans we know nothing about to a whole other frightening level. Now, let's look at a case where essentially the opposite of the devil's whole story happened, where we found the people and found them alive, such as the case of Tizon Marin back in August of this year, 2024. And I want to bring this one up because it reiterates just how easy it is for someone to just wander into a cave and then potentially get lost. Now, 8-year-old Tizon went exploring the entrance of Arizona's Lava River Cave and was reported missing around 6 p.m. on August 21st of this year. His family lost sight of him after he was last seen near the cave entrance playing. It's honestly it's a nightmare scenario for a family. Starting off like some tragic missing 411 stories, but thankfully this story doesn't end nearly as mysteriously or tragically as most of those tend to. Now, the entrance to the cave is essentially a pile of rocks. The cave is a million-year-old lava tube, actually, and temperatures inside the cave get down to 42 even in the summer. The cave is also described by Forest Service employees as a very dark 1-mile hike. Thankfully, the boy was found alive and returned to his family. Now on screen here is the sinkhole I referenced earlier. This thing is an open pit in the ground that you can only see if you're coming at from a certain angle. And it goes down, straight down 142 feet into a huge cave. I'm not going to say what it's called or where it is. However, I'm putting it on screen to reiterate how easy it would be to fall into this. From this side, yes, it looks, you can tell, that is an opening. From the other side, it just looks like a pile of rocks in a pit. You can't see the opening from the other side. And I know in Tizon's case, it was just a kid, but people can have accidents at any age, and people are curious at any age. People explore, people get lost in caves, people probably fall in caves like this one, and it doesn't necessarily mean something was in there that killed or took them. Look, you know me, I love scary stuff. I love the whole monsters are coming out of the caves to grab you. However, getting back into the realm of reality a little bit here, and even getting out of the idea of government secrets leading to people disappearing, people can just become curious, go into a cave, and die. You know, a tragic example of finding someone in a cave they vanished in was this guy named Peter, a man who got too curious and he died in Sturkfontein Cave. You know, he was a diver, and he kept leaving the guide rope while his group kept trying to stop him, and then eventually he just disappeared into one of the other tunnels. They couldn't find him, and then like 3 weeks later, a team mining in a cave above him tunneled into this other chamber and found him dead. It's like, Peter is an example of someone just getting excited and curious and wanting to explore. Someone of any age, something someone of any age can succumb to, and this is what ultimately cost him his life. And if I had to take a guess, this is probably what's ultimately cost a lot of the people we've covered in this video their lives. Do I think, say, Kenny Veach may have actually stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see? Maybe. Is the more likely scenario the more mundane one, where he maybe got lost, or maybe ran out of water, or found the wrong cave, or actually found the M cave, but it was just a hazardous natural cave? All of those are just as possible. And Peter's story is a reflection of how almost anyone could find a cave and explore it and ultimately get lost. So is Tizon's. Now, something that ties into what I talked about earlier but haven't really touched on yet is the idea of serial killers, or just killers, maybe using caves as a dumping ground. And one case of this is that of Orla Barrick in 1996. Barrick was last seen on Laurel Ridge in Mammoth Cave. Barrick's home was later discovered in the following state. The lights were off. The carpet was stained with blood. The sofa was apparently moved out of place. Barrick's dentures were found soaking. A burnt cigarette was found on a shelf, and Barrick's dog was still in its crate. Her family confirmed that Barrick was expecting no visitors. Foul play is suspected in this case, though robbery is not thought to be the motive. And all that has been found of her were clumps of her hair found in a river in the vicinity of the cave, and no other traces of her have ever been found. She might very well be buried somewhere deep in that cave to this very day. Another disappearance tied to the Mammoth Cave area is that of Michael L. Vincent, though this is a very different scenario. He vanished while on parole and was never seen again following a house fire, a house that he actually shared with his mother and aunt. He disappeared in 2011, and some theorize he may have faked his disappearance and used the nearby cave as a scapegoat for it. Now, on to another case that is more in line with the kind of things we've been looking at, and is eerily similar to some other cases we've looked at. It takes us to 2004, when an individual named Ronald Baldwin vanished in the vicinity of Mammoth Cave while riding near the cave. No sign of him has ever been found. Eerily making you wonder about the idea once again, if things aren't coming out of the caves and snatching people, no? Also kind of makes you wonder, maybe he saw an entrance to the cave, decided to go exploring, and just never came out again. But either way, when someone vanishes into a cave without a trace, you really just gotta wonder what really is in their depths, and it just makes your mind wander. Makes your mind wander from the mundane explanation of someone got curious, wandered in, never came out, to the more scary, something's coming out of the caves and taking people in. It just, stuff like this, the unknowns just really can make the mind wander in a way that few other things can. Another person who, like Ronald, also vanished while riding their four-wheeler in the vicinity of the cave occurred 11 years earlier in 1993. Tony Choate, who also has never been seen since the day he vanished. Foul play is suspected in this case, but the really eerie similarities might not mean that a monster is taking people, but that a just as scary scenario might be at play. Think about it. We have two people who vanished in very similar circumstances in the Mammoth Cave area. They were riding their four-wheelers in a semi-isolated area near a cave. What if there is an unidentified serial killer who uses that area of the cave as both a hunting and a dumping ground? So moving to 1973, we also found another Mammoth Cave mystery, that of the Barron County Jane Doe. She was found badly decomposed in November of that year, and it was determined that she had been in that spot for 10 weeks. She was killed by a single shotgun blast to her chest, and strangely, next to her body were a bunch of keys that were found, and two of them were engraved with the number 114. What that means is unknown to this day. She is believed to be connected to the Redhead murders, a series of killings acted out by an unknown serial killer that I had never even heard of, but it's another rabbit hole that I may do for Halloween next year. Another Jane Doe was found in the Mammoth Cave area in 1984, another Barron County Jane Doe. She died from being gagged and suffocated before being dumped into the Barron River Reservoir. In her case as well, no killer has ever been caught, or even as far as I could find, suspected. Gonna also put a verbal warning out now before I show this next image, but in the interest of education, science, and discussion, I will be showing a real mummy. Now, if you don't want to see that, I totally understand. You can click off or skip ahead about a minute. This will just be a really quick, short mention. I think it's important for the history and the science and the conversation and education that you see this kind of stuff. So this is purely for educational reasons. Viewer discretion is advised, though, and if you don't want to see it, here's your last chance. Click off or skip ahead about a minute. Now then, this is just an honorary mention, but this is the mummy of Lost John that was found in 1935. Not very mysterious, as he was found crushed by a falling boulder, but what made me want to include this little mention was the really eerie, just scary detail that he was reportedly found with a frozen screen still on his face after the many centuries that he'd been deceased. Just really creepy and unsettling to imagine this poor person screaming for who knows how long. To this day, the exact Indian tribe he belonged to is also unknown. Now then, while I was doing research for this video and kind of just jotting down a couple paragraphs on a Google Doc that I've just been ranting about, one article I found was from Medium, so take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, but there were sources, and I only really wanted to talk about this one because it really just fit the theme with what we were talking about with cave disappearances and maybe the supernatural being at play. So at the end here, I'm gonna kind of lean back into the maybe supernatural aspects being at play for cave disappearances. And again, it's Halloween, so it fits the topic. So this article was by Cyber Theatic Project on Medium, and I'm going to actually quote the opening of the article because I really like this opening. Quote, "Caves, humanity's primal sanctuaries, have always held an allure that's both wondrous and ominous." End quote. Now, on to the meat of the article. Its first serving was this story. In 1925, cave explorer Floyd Collins ventured into the vast sandstone labyrinth underneath Kentucky, and he was later found in a contorted, twisted position, creepy, that was thought to be impossible for him to gotten himself into. Creepier, he had no visible injuries on his body, and the rescue team reportedly saw strange UFO like lights in the sky above and near the cave. And this is about 20 years before the big flying saucer UFO craze really started, so who knows what happened? Maybe a freak accident and some weird normal weather phenomenon that just happened to overlap and people didn't know what they were seeing, or creepy idea, but maybe if it was aliens and he was abducted and they tried to put him back where they found him, maybe they tried to put him back together in the way they found him and they just didn't get it right. Like this is the closest they could figure out how to put a human in. Yeah, that idea just sent a shiver down my spine. Probably not, but who knows? The whole theme of this article was cave disappearances or cave mysteries tied in with UFO sightings, so let's keep looking at them. Jumping to 1967, three boys, ages 11, 13, and 14, were last seen heading out to explore a recently exposed cave portal. They were never seen again, despite an intense search by experts. No sign of them were ever found in the cave, and witnesses also reported that a mysterious figure, odd way to describe them, was lurking around a nearby cliff in the days that led up to the disappearance, and the following ideas exist. They were trapped and swallowed up by the cave, maybe from a cave-in. They could have been abducted, or they could have run away, but this idea is not seen as likely by the family, and I'm inclined to believe them on that one. So, probably one of the other two, but as for which one, it's anybody's guess. So another disappearance on this article tied into the whole UFO sighting, cave-related disappearance correlation happened in 1980, when David Lang, a caver with over a decade of experience, abruptly vanished. Again, the search teams never found any sign of him, but people reported that they saw a UFO in the area at the time he vanished. One witness apparently even saw him enter a UFO. But who knows? As scary as that idea is, so is the idea that he never came out of the cave at all and is still down there, and we're looking up for him when we maybe should be looking down. Maybe he was even taken by something already in the cave if we're leaning back into the supernatural aspect of it. So, what do I think of all of this, though? Of all of these stories of maps showing the overlap of people disappearing in caves near government military bases, of UFOs, of monsters in caves, or even just the mundane tragic accidents, is there a correlation between higher numbers of caves being in an area and higher number of missing people? Probably somewhat, but I don't think it's as high of an overlap as some online sleuths might lead you to think, or that they are as sinister as one might think. Human curiosity and people getting into a place they aren't supposed to be, it happens. Sure, do killers probably use caves as dumping grounds for bodies? Sure, there's that one really creepy YouTube video of a bunch of kids looking in, I think it's an old mine out in Nevada, and there's a bunch of kids' shoes from like the 80s just piled up on one back wall. Really weird. Really, really weird. Really, really creepy. But also, accidents happen. Again, heck, oh, you could be walking around the woods and fall into an open sinkhole you don't see, or people might find a cave and they decide to go poking around and they're not prepared and they get trapped or die. Even people with lots of experience, like that's probably what happened to David Lang. He probably just went into a cave and it just got the better of him. Like ultimately, you have to remember a cave being an area on its own is not indicative someone went into it, or that something is coming out of it, or that people are being put into them by, like, serial killers. Is there somewhat of an overlap? I'd say yes. Are they all sinister? No. Are some of the reasons sinister? Probably. But I don't think it's as high as one might think. And, like I said, I mostly wanted to do this video for the creepy factor, and you can talk about some cool stories and bring some awareness to some real missing people and some really weird and obscure mysteries that a lot of people probably don't know about. Plus, it is an absolutely tragic fact that people disappear all over the place every day, not just in areas with more cave systems. So I'm gonna probably wrap this one up with that. Let's just take a moment to just really think about that fact. People disappear everywhere all the time, and it's just an absolutely tragic thing that happens. Now, this video, it really didn't have a format, as you noticed. I basically, normally when I write a video, I actually write down an entire script, even with like fade image in here, fade in text here, say this bit here, pause here, I actually write scripts. For this video, I basically wrote down an outline. I wrote down notes for a script and notes for ideas to cover, and I basically mostly did this one just off script, mostly just my own ranting. And it actually ended up being way longer than I expected it to be. I did not expect this video to be pushing 40 minutes. But if you're still watching and you actually listened to this crazy rant, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And have a happy Halloween. And check out some of my more organized videos going into unsolved mysteries of all kinds. From missing ships to unsolved killings and disappearances. And I'll link a few of my videos at the end if you want to see more. So thank you for watching, and have a great one, everyone. And I want to apologize for the lack of content lately. This year has just not been good for me. And my creative drive is running on fumes, and it has been for months. Still, hoping and very optimistic for next year. I'm hoping to start making videos again more frequently next year because I do love it. And I'm optimistic on finally getting my novel, The Spinosaurus, published next year. So that big project is very exciting for me, and it's almost there. The finish line is on the horizon for it, and I've been working on The Spinosaurus as a story since 2018, and I've been working on the novel since 2021. So it's been a long road, and but it's the finish line is finally in sight. The book is almost edited, and all I really need left is to just do some of the other behind the scenes stuff for it, like getting a cover and everything ready to go, format it correctly, and then it'll be done. And it's been like 2 years since I last did a narration from the Spinosaurus novel. And I did want to do a remastered one of this year. It just didn't happen. Maybe next year before the book comes out. But yeah. So if you've listened to those narrations on my channel when I did them a couple years ago, the book is finally almost here. So keep an eye out for that, and I'm really hopeful within a year it'll be out. And also, tell me if you like this more off-scripted format. If you do, I may do videos like this from time to time, where it was fun to just write down ideas and then kind of just go off on a rant with my own ideas instead of doing a strict format, which I also enjoy. So anyway, let me know what you think. And you gotta look into my crazy mind with this video, so maybe that was a positive for you? Alright, it's almost time, everyone. Be in front of your TV sets at 9. It's almost time. And have a happy Halloween.